So I'm working on starting you off on the ribbing for the neckline. So whether or not you still have your yarn attached here from your bottom ribbing or not, you will either chain from the yarn that's still attached, or you want to attach your yarn, the colour that you're using or the main colour, to the very bottom stitch right here. If your yarn is still attached, it'll come off the very corner here, but that's completely fine. So we insert hook, yarn over and pull through, and that is attached. Now we're going to chain 8. 1, 2, 4, 6, 8. And as with before, with other ribbing, we work our first single crochet into the second chain here from the hook. Single crochet, and in each stitch you will end up with 7, and 7 is your stitch count for the entire ribbing. And one more. All right, now this is the easy bit, jumping up along the side of the bottom ribbing here. It's very easy to find your way. We slip stitch into the second stitch here. All right, it's important that if your yarn was already attached, you essentially skip the first one and slip stitch. And again into the third. Same method, 2 slip stitches, chain 1, turn your work. We then skip the 2 slip stitches, and again we're going to work into the back loop only for our 7 single crochets. This is the first one here. Back loop only. Making sure you have 7, and again at the end, chaining 1 and turning back. So for this one I'm going to twist my hook around so I don't have to throw the whole cardigan over. All right, and we're ready to work back in, slip stitch into these 2 stitches, and I'll meet you back when we hit this trickier bit where we start to work into the sides of our DC rows. And we're back up at the top, the very top of the ribbing section here. So I've done my rows all the way up, and I'm ready to attach or anchor my yarn into the side of the double crochet row here, which is a little bit trickier than just following the stitch guide. So what I'm going to do for this first one is I've come out my very last couple of rows. My last slip stitch was in the first little gap here, which is the final stitch, the top of the final double crochet stitch. Regardless of where you're going into or where you're ready for, the 2 places I like to anchor into are the very middle of the post. So I'll show you what I do here. I like to go in and split the post. I don't like to go fully around it. I feel like it creates less of a pull on the actual cardigan, or less of a gap, chances for a gap. So I go gently, try to get through the actual post, slip stitch through there, and then the second spot is this spot here, which is essentially the top of the double crochet where I slip stitched here. It's essentially the stitch space. So if you think of it as 2 slip stitches, sorry, 2 rows of ribbing per double crochet row, you want both of your slip stitches to be within the same double crochet, but I've done one into the very belly of the double crochet and one into the top. And then I chain one and turn. I work my rib rows, and when I come back, I'm going to go straight into the middle of this next double crochet and into the top of it, or into the top of the next one essentially. So just to give you a little more help with that, I'm going to go slip stitch into the middle and into the end. Slip stitch into the middle and then into the end, or if you like, into the top of the next one. If you are starting a little lower than I was, you'll go slip stitch into the top here, then into the middle. Just remembering that you want two rib rows per double crochet row, or into the side of each double crochet row. Let me just take you through one more. This, by now, you'd be pretty good at this single crochet into the back loop, remembering to count every now and then to avoid tears and a wonky ribbing, which is really quite easy to be seen if you do drop a stitch or pick up a stitch. All right, we're back here, and I'm double checking that my last anchor was into the top of the double crochet here. I'm going to go into the middle, through the middle, slip stitch, and then into the end or the bottom of this one, or you could say the top of the next one. Hopefully. And all the way back and forward and back and forward. And I did mention with this ribbing, I have used a firm. So we worked a fair bit of our ribbing. This is the inside, so that's the look you'll see on the inside. That's the side that'll be facing. This is along the neckline, and I thought I would show you the process of coming back around the neckline to the second little corner. So this is, I mean, it's barely a corner, but if you remember with your yoke, this is the very end of the starting chain, the very beginning of your crochet work. So you can see all of my little V stitches coming up here, and that's my slightly jutting out corner. So just to give you some idea of how to work your ribbing over the corner, I might pop you forward a bit and single crochet into the back loop as we have been. You'll find that around the neck where you're working into each original chain, it's a little easier to find your spots. We anchor. If you find you have a loose chain like this one, just jump into two. It should be easy enough to pop into two layers or two loops anyway. One slip stitch and two, chain one and turn, and I think we'll anchor over the corner at the next row end. Chain one, turn back. I'm finding sometimes when I turn back, it's a little trickier to get behind, but I'm able to not have to turn my entire cardigan or even my hook. And it still works out neatly. So we're heading back into the corner now. One more stitch and oh, look at that, we've got another couple of rows. And again, chain one, and we've reached the corner here. Going to slip stitch into the second last spot, and I've found that my last chain here is actually, I can't actually explain why there's a bit of a gap there. What I'm going to do is, the goal is to smoothly, for your ribbing to not kind of come to the corner and then turn, rather for your ribbing to smoothly go over the corner and almost make the, well, definitely to make the corner disappear. So I'm actually going to go right over this and into and anchor it underneath this gap. Now my first corner was not this tricky, it was smoother, but as long as you know that the goal is to just have a smooth rib line, you should be fine heading over that little bump. And we're back, still in the middle of the bump really. I'm going to go into the middle here, and from there we get to jump into what looks like the first kind of stitch down the side of our cardigan. We're on the home stretch, which is exciting. Chain one, turn, and then as soon as you're back onto the other side of your cardigan, you know what you're doing, working into the same spots as I showed you for the first side. So next we'll anchor into the little top of the stitch here, and then into the middle of your post. I'm going to take you through that quickly, get you back to, this is where it's tricky. I will do my little maneuver to turn. I'm not sure if that worked, but let's, no, there we are. And I'll just slow it down for you. I get to a point where I assume you know what I'm doing. Remembering to make sure you're on 7, because if you're not, 3, 6, 7, and I am twisting and turning here to get you back into the routine you were in. So inserting hook into the top of the stitch here, slip stitching, and then into the middle of the post. If you're finding it hard to go through the post, feel free to just go around it. Chain one, turn, work back up, and then your ribbing will come around and all the way down.